Grave warning. Guys, it's time to prepare. Now, Iran warns that the U.S. won't be spared if Israel-Hamas war spreads. Millions are searching. The term World War III confirms that the greatest concern for American and the world right now is, will we be entering into a World War III situation? Now, the abrupt change is coming. This is the warning that we've actually heard from Tucker Carlson, and he warns America is on the brink of collapse as he's lashing out at President Biden. Tucker Carlson also told an audience that many Americans are concerned about end times, as he alluded to the U.S. economy's troubles. And Tucker Carlson also asks, what what doesn't work? Saying that you're going to be spending $100 billion in other countries. Now, according to the U.S. Pentagon, there have now been at least 19 attacks on U.S. military bases and personnel in Iraq and Syria since October 17th, including 3 new attacks in the last 24 hours. Now, Air Force Brig General Pat Ryder, he said that 21 U.S. personnel, troops, guys, were injured in 2 of those assaults that used drones to attack al-Assad air base in Iraq and Garrison in Syria. The United States, Israel, Palestine, Hamas, Ukraine, Russia, Taiwan, and China, are we prepared for World War III? Now, guys, I mean, if we take a second, and before I go any further, just please drop me a quick comment. Make sure you guys can, I want to make sure you guys can hear me. So if you could just kindly drop a comment, let me know if the sound is good. But it all began a couple of weeks back when the world was essentially jolted by news of a Hamas attack on Israel. It was wild, and it has only gotten wilder since then. And this was the spark that literally set off a chain reaction of events with repercussions that have literally been felt well beyond the borders of the Middle East. And it wasn't long before the spotlight ended up turning to the United States on its stance, I should say our stance on the matter. And President Biden, he voiced a stern warning. In the aftermath of the Hamas attack, President Joe Biden, he didn't mince words. He issued a stern warning, and, not to an individual or an abstract entity, but a very real and potentially volatile player on the world stage, Iran of all people. Although the entity itself is real, the exact warning, it was fairly targeted. Now, you might be asking why, right? Well, it boils down to the fact that Iran openly provides financial support for Hamas and the very organization that's responsible for the attacks on Israel. Now, of course, the United States, we're a staunch ally of Israel. And, they've really got we've got each other's backs in times like these. Now, President Biden's warning was more like a shot across the bow. Basically, it was meant to deter Iran from doing anything that might lead to an attack on U.S. soil, ideally to avoid a World War III. Now, hopefully things can de-escalate, but if we fast forward to the past week, things have literally taken a very dangerous turn. U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East have been hit not once, not twice, not 3 times, but a staggering 14 times, guys. Now, these attacks have ultimately resulted in like 24 brave soldiers getting injured in the line of duty. The Pentagon, the folks in the know about the military matters, they reported 11 of these attacks happening in Iraq, with 3 more happening in Syria. So, unfortunately, this thing's actually spreading rather than being de-escalated. Now, as you might have guessed, fingers are being pointed squarely at Iran as the culprit behind these attacks. And it's kind of like a real life game of international Clue with Iran holding the metaphorical smoking gun. What are you guys' thoughts on these events so far, guys? Drop me some comments. I know I see the comments going crazy right now. It's a very wild, concerning, and biblical time right now. And I can understand why a lot of Americans are concerned about the end times. Are we headed into a World War III situation? Can we avoid World War III with all of these different countries from around the world getting involved individual countries and their own, whether or not there's an alliance. It's like, some of these countries depend on one another for their own natural resources, commerce. So, and not to mention from a territorial standpoint. So you can easily see how many countries around the world would potentially be involved in this thing, right? So, yeah, that's where we're at right now. So now the big question that's on a lot of people's minds is, is the rest of the world taking these threats seriously? And I don't think that you can take them any other way. I mean, is there a lack of respect for President Biden's leadership, or is this just the usual geopolitical messiness? What are you guys' thoughts on President Biden's stance on our involvement in these wars and the actions that have been taken thus far? What do you guys think would happen if Trump were in office in this very situation versus President Biden? Just drop me some comments down below. Let me know what you guys think on the contrast between those two leaders. So to add to the mix, you got tech mogul Elon Musk. He's even thrown his 2 cents into the ring, right? He's ringing alarm bells about the potential for World War III erupting from our current conflicts. Now, it's not every day that you see a billionaire entrepreneur doubling as a doomsday prophet, right? But, it is Elon Musk, and that is what he's saying. Now, of course, every story has two sides. And Iran, they're not staying silent. Iran is actually pointing their own fingers back at the United States, placing blame on what's happening in Gaza squarely on American shoulders. What do you guys think about that? Now, if that wasn't, eyebrow raising enough, there's even been sightings of Iranian leaders meeting with the higher ups in Hamas, hinting at a possible alliance in the making. This is the last thing that we need, okay? So in the midst of all of this, the United States does not need this. So in the midst of all this, President Joe Biden hasn't been sitting on his hands, thankfully. I think he's taken enough time to at least, finish the ice cream cone and kind of come into perform as a leader. Now, in the past 24 hours, he issued another warning. At this time, a little bit more of a specific threat. He made it clear that if Iran decides to take a swing at U.S. troops, there will be consequences. Now, this statement came hot on the heels of multiple attacks against American soldiers and military installations in the Middle East. In my opinion, technically Iran has already done this. But, back in the good old US of A, House of Representatives, they made its stance known. They already passed a resolution that overwhelmingly supports Israel in its ongoing conflict with Hamas. Now, the question is, can we afford to do this? Can we afford two major wars? Potentially a third war, and that's where it really gets dicey. So they passed a resolution that overwhelmingly supports Israel in this ongoing conflict with Hamas. And this is a show of solidarity that's been met with both applause and criticism from both sides of the aisle, depending upon where you stand. So where do you guys stand? Should we support Israel? Should we continue to send more money overseas? Ukraine is, steadily with their hand out. And, I understand both arguments, but I want to hear from you guys. This is kind of wild where we're at, and we can't keep printing money. We cannot keep printing money. I don't see how much longer the United States can afford to dole out at the rate of funds that we're sending out. But of course, amid all this saber rattling and political maneuvers, there's a growing sense of unease. Of course, there's the possibility of World War III breaking out due to these escalating conflicts being a very significant concern. But of course, the world hasn't been ignoring what's going on. And in fact, the world, I think, and you guys let me know if you disagree, I think that the world has seen enough wars. I don't want to see a World War III. And the prospect of another global catastrophe is, to put it mildly, it's terrifying. And of course, there's been more and more rumors and discussions unofficially about potentially reinstating the draft in the United States. If you guys had caught one of my recent videos, I discussed how unfit our our Americans are, our troops here, or one of the biggest reasons, one of the biggest reasons why we're understaffed from a military standpoint is because many people just can't even qualify to be in the military due to their lack of being fit, their unhealthy behaviors, basically overweight, too fat, that kind of thing, right? And so some voices in the chorus of concern are arguing that it's time to prioritize avoiding World War III at all costs and focusing on restoring normal relations with other major players on the international stage like Russia. Now, what is concerning and what's really alarming is how quickly this has escalated. I mean, this has escalated so quickly in the last 30 days. And it's wild how close this is to the 2024 elections. And many people think, that, some things are occurring as according to plan. Now, you guys let me know what you guys think on that. Have you heard that? Is that what you're thinking? Drop me some comments, guys. I know I don't want to see I don't want to see WW3. I don't want to see it. Now, meanwhile, back to the nation's capital, Congress has returned from its recess and they got a whole laundry list of issues to tackle, from healthcare to infrastructure to Social Security, SSI, SSDI, VA, veterans benefits. It's a reminder that life goes on in the midst of these international crises. So we have multiple very, very expensive, costly wars that the United States is funding. We have a known shortfall in the Social Security fund, and a potential third war could be brewing. Then on top of that, we have the 2024 elections coming up. I mean, the Federal Reserve is trying to get inflation under control. We have so many issues right now. We do not need to escalate into a third world war. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, as we wrap up this whirlwind tour of the recent Middle East crisis, one thing remains abundantly clear. The situation remains very fluid and it's very uncertain, and these updates are coming out quickly. So if you guys appreciate the content, do me a quick favor, drop a quick like for the video. Also consider subscribing to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about it. But again, these ongoing concerns about the potential for escalation, the need for diplomacy and peace has never, ever been greater. So if you are, one to pray, I would genuinely request that you guys do that. So as the world watches, waits, and hopes for resolution that doesn't lead us down the treacherous path of a World War III, I hope we can make it through this, guys. So I'm going to continue to keep you guys updated on the latest. Drop me some likes, subscribe, and I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. Be safe.